afternoon. It's Andrew O'Donnell with Supercharged Stocks. I'm glad to be here with Niv Dagan, who I met a couple weeks back off of Boardroom Media with Will Canty. And I'm glad that we could sit down and have a bit of a chat and ask your expertise from down under, learn a bit more about you and what, as an investor, you're seeing in a number of spaces, but mainly psychedelics, and with Peak Asset Management as an investor.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Thanks very much for having us from Melbourne, Australia. So yeah, I mean, we're seeing quite a lot of insight at the moment. I mean, markets are a little bit volatile with talk of a second wave, but Tesla's stock price is now about $1,000 at the moment, and oil is now above $40 as well. But there's the huge influx of money going into the psychedelic space, which we're very excited about also down here.
Yeah, and before we get any further, there's a big connection with Vancouver, which a lot of people look at the cannabis and psychedelics coming, there's a big interest, obviously. You've lived here in Vancouver for a while.
Yeah, I spent 2 years in Vancouver. It's a funny story, actually. My wife saw a picture with our next door neighbours about 2.5 years ago from Melbourne, and she said, let's go to Vancouver. And I said, are you crazy? But we did. We headed up to Vancouver and spent 2 magical years on the other side where you're at, and absolutely loved it. So now look, there's a really, really strong connection between the Australian market and the Canadian market, because what you normally see, Andrew, is when things are going well down here in gold, they're normally going well up in Canada. When things are going well in blockchain enterprise, they're normally going well down here. I mean, and when things are going well in, for example, psychedelics or cannabis, they're normally going, they're very, very strongly related markets, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, the thing I wanted to touch on was, there's so much similarities, and there's caution as well with the psychedelics as far as the cannabis and cannabinoid market, is that people they can see there's a huge market here in the psychedelic space, but at the same time, they're like, let's learn from some of the mistakes that were made in the past 3 years, because this has the potential to really revolutionize healthcare and to really address in a bit more mindful manner, not to use kind of cliche words, a lot of mental health issues, just right off the top of the head: addiction, PTSD, mental illness of that kind of nature, as well as any like depression and whatnot. So that's kind of, I'm new to this space. This is my interest level at this point, but that's kind of my overview whenever I look at it.
Yeah, look, it's really interesting. I mean, I'm also very new to the space, and we saw the whole cannabis space and bubble. We came across actually a charity down under called MindMed Australia, not MindMed in the US, but MindMed Australia. There was actually an article in just yesterday here in the Australian Financial Review regarding what they're trying to do is basically allow everyday Australians an opportunity to allow access to these drugs. So if it's done in a controlled environment, using psilocybin to treat, as you mentioned, PTSD, concussion, depression, it's in a really, really interesting area. And since then, I got connected to Jonathan Holmes from Investor News Network as well, that I know personally in Vancouver, who introduced me to Jonathan Gilbert and Jonathan Held. And that's how I got in touch with what's happening with Illusion and also Green Star as well.
Give me a little bit of what's happening with Illusion, because once again, it's a Vancouver story. It's just blocks away from me. For people that have interest, you're not too late. We're just like at the start of where this space can go. Although there's like 50 years of data and research, there's a ton of work that's been done and goodwill put in. Illusion is pretty new to the space, but it's got some big names involved.
Oh, look, Jonathan Gilbert is a seasoned veteran. So he and Jonathan Held and Max, who set up Tassili Biosciences, which sold to Mushroom, which is Champignon Brands, and since then set up Illusion together and have formed a great partnership. So look, they've got a venture with the University of Miami. They're looking at the treatment of psilocybin on PTSD, concussion, especially with athletes, and also the military. I think that's a really, really interesting space, especially with trauma and what's occurred. And down under, I think it's the same paradigm here, a paradigm shift with a lot of people that are suffering from depression and concussion and PTSD that are, has used traditionally other drugs that hasn't worked. And if it's done in a controlled environment, it's pretty magical. But what you're saying, Andrew, absolutely, it is still in its infancy. It's still early stage. So we see a lot of potential upside, and and there's very, very strong parallels to where Canopy and Aurora and the Free and some of those big names were about 5 or 6 years ago when the beginning of the cannabis space. So look, really, really exciting. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, for me as well, because I look at investing and the way I kind of talk to people is it has to be not just a value, there has to be some value to invest in. It should be values based. And this is a huge upside potential of shifting and helping a huge population. That to me, if someone's looking at their portfolio and they think, you know, why do I own, I won't pick on a company, but why do I own XYZ? And if it's just, well, it's getting me a rate of return, it's decent, it's fine. It's like, well, wouldn't it be better if there's a bigger potential to reward companies that are really trying to reshape, re-challenge the way we think of the world, especially right now, because we see this massive shift happening. We see that even as the World Economic Forum calls it, the Great Reset, is that this is a time whenever it's, you know, there's lots of intellectual upheaval, there's lots of social unrest, but it's going to catapult us hopefully to this new way of envisioning nature, you know, how we interact with each other, nature, and this kind of all ties together with this idea of psychedelics and plant-based medicine as well. It's a whole shift in thinking, and I think that people that if they're led by their hearts with their brains and want to make some money, this is a great space to reward good teams of management that have a good business plan at an early stage, because that's where you make your largest or potential gain.
I think that was a really good summary, Andrew. I think it's, you know, there's a lot of ideas out there, right? There's a lot of concepts, but it comes down to execution. And it's really important. One thing we at Peak Asset Management look at the ability of management to, and the track record to execute, right? And that's what really attracted us to the Illusion Biosciences team. They've got a previous track record. They've got a track record of creating shareholder value. The other thing I think your viewers should also take a conception look at is management ownership. So it's really important to have a look at, let's say, do these guys have skin in the game, or are they just getting paid their wages? I think, you know, one of my favorite questions to ask management teams when I'm in a room with them is that, how much do you get paid for rent, or how much do you pay rent? Because it just gives you a really good indication if they're cost conscious or they're not cost conscious. And looking at the management inside, their track record, are they using the resources in terms of shareholder money to drive shareholder value? I think that's really important. So overall, you know, that's what was really attractive for us to invest in Illusion, and we're really excited by it.
And now timing is key, because you're having and hosting an event tomorrow, and I'll link that in here as well. So with Illusion, with Mind Medicine Australia, and with as well, Champagne.
Yeah, so there's 3 companies. There's Mind Medicine Australia, Illusion, and Empower Clinics from Canada. So we've got a good mix of Australian and Canadian companies to talk about the space. But yeah, look, we're hosting a webinar, which is 12:30 p.m. In Melbourne, Australia, which is 7:30 p.m. Thursday night, your time. So have a look at the link, and yeah, would love to have you over and check it out. And I think it's really interesting that the setup of it will be 3 companies presenting, 10 minutes or 15 minutes each, followed by Q&A for each company. So it will allow your viewers and yourself, Andrew, potentially an opportunity to ask the management team some questions. And now, look, we'll be there, obviously, and really excited to have you on board.
Well, I'm already signed up, so I'm already coming. I'm really looking forward, because these are 3 companies that I know very little about, so get a chance to hear the management as well, kind of see them as well. I find that makes a big difference. So I'll get that out right away as well. I really appreciate you taking some time this morning to have a quick chat with us, and we'll talk to you real soon, and I'll see you tomorrow on the live stream anyway.
Andrew, thanks for having us, and look forward to doing this again soon.
Excellent. Have a great day.